Statistics say that during a robbery, 90% of victims experience a heart rate spike of over 180 beats per minute. They panic, they scream, they beg. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, inside a rundown diner in South Boston, Sienna Brooks did none of those things. When a sawed-off shotgun was leveled at her forehead, she didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She simply asked if they wanted the pie to go. It was the coldest thing anyone in the room had ever seen. And watching from the shadows of the back booth was the one man dangerous enough to fall in love with it. But what happens when the woman who never shows fear finally meets someone who makes her heart race? Stay with us to find out. The fluorescent lights of Miller's all-night diner hummed with an irritating buzz that usually drove new customers crazy. For Sienna Brooks, it was just the soundtrack of her life. It was 2:14 a.m. on a Tuesday. The rain was hammering against the plate glass windows, turning the streets of Boston into a blurred smear of neon and charcoal. Sienna adjusted her apron, wiping a coffee ring off the Formica counter. She was 26, but her eyes looked older, tired, detached, and devoid of the sparkle people usually expected from a woman her age. She had been working at Miller's for 3 years. It paid the rent for her studio apartment in Dorchester, and more importantly, it was invisible. Nobody looked twice at a waitress in a greased uniform. There were only 3 tables occupied. In the corner, old man Henderson was nursing a decough, asleep with his mouth slightly open. By the window, a young couple was arguing in hushed, tearful whispers. And in the back booth, booth 4, the one with the torn red vinyl, sat a man who hadn't touched his food. Sienna had noticed him the moment he walked in. He was wearing a suit that cost more than the diner's annual revenue, charcoal gray, tailored to a terrifying perfection. He had dark hair, eyes the color of burnt espresso, and he sat with his back to the wall facing the door. He hadn't spoken a word, just pointed at the menu. Sienna walked over with the pot. "Top off?" she asked. The man looked up. His eyes didn't just scan her. They dismantled her. "Black," he said. His voice was a low rumble like tires on gravel. "It's fresh," Sienna said automatically, pouring the steaming liquid. She noticed the man's hand resting on the table. No watch, no ring, but on the knuckles of his right hand, there were faint white scars. She walked back to the counter, checking the clock. 2:18 a.m. That was when the bell above the door jingled. It wasn't the soft jingle of a regular customer. The door was kicked open so hard it slammed against the wall, cracking the plaster. "Everybody down now. On the ground." The shout was raw, cracked, and desperate. Sienna didn't gasp. She didn't drop the coffee pot. She set it down on the warmer, clicked the switch to low, and turned around slowly. 3 men, ski masks, baggy hoodies soaking wet from the rain. The one in the middle held a snub-nosed revolver that looked shaky in his grip. The one on the left had a crowbar. The one on the right, the wildest of the bunch, was twitching, high on something that made his eyes bulge through the holes in his mask. "I said, get on the ground, bitch." The middle gunman screamed, waving the gun towards the young couple, who were already sobbing on the linoleum. Old man Henderson snorted awake, looking around in confusion. Sienna leaned her hip against the counter. She crossed her arms. "Register's open," she said. Her voice was flat, monotone. It cut through the panic in the room like a scalpel. "Take the cash. Leave the tip jar. The tips are ours." The gunman froze. He blinked, clearly expecting screaming. He marched up to the counter, shoving the barrel of the gun into Sienna's face. The metal was cold against her cheekbone. It smelled of gun oil and rust. "You think this is a joke?" The gunman spat, sweat dripping from his mask. "I'll blow your head off." In the back booth, the man in the charcoal suit shifted. His hand slid beneath his jacket. Sienna's eyes flickered to the back booth for a fraction of a second. A microsignal. "Don't." She looked back at the gunman. She looked directly into his pupils. "Your safety is on," Sienna said. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. The gunman frowned, his eyes darting down to the weapon. "What?" "The safety," Sienna repeated, sounding bored. "It's a 6 Sauer P229 copy. The safety is the lever on the side. If you pull the trigger right now, nothing happens. And by the time you figure that out, the cops will be here because I hit the silent alarm 3 minutes ago when I saw you idiots casing the parking lot." It was a lie. She hadn't hit the alarm. But she said it with such absolute terrifying conviction that the air left the room. The gunman panicked. He looked down at the gun, fumbling with the lever. "She's lying," the guy with the crowbar yelled. "Just shoot her." "I can't find it," the gunman screamed. Sienna sighed. She reached under the counter. The three men flinched, expecting a weapon. She pulled out a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. She lit one, taking a long drag, staring at the gun barrel still pointed at her face. "You have about 30 seconds. She exhaled smoke towards the ceiling. "Police station is 2 blocks over. Shift change is at 2:15. That means there are double the cruisers on the street right now." The distinct sound of sirens wailed in the distance. That part was luck. Pure luck. But Sienna didn't show relief. She just raised an eyebrow. "Go," she commanded. The three men scrambled. They tripped over each other, cursing, smashing into the door frame as they fled into the rainy night, leaving the register untouched. Sienna took another drag of the cigarette. She walked over to the door, closed it, and locked it. Then she turned to the sobbing couple on the floor. "You guys okay? You want a free slice of pie?" She walked back to the counter to pick up the coffee pot. Her hands were steady, perfectly steady. That was when she felt the presence behind her. She turned. The man from the back booth was standing there. He was tall, looming over her. The smell of expensive cologne and rain clung to him. He wasn't looking at the door. He was looking at her. "You lied," he said. Sienna poured him a refill. "About the police. About the safety," the man said softly. "That gun didn't have a manual safety. It was a double action. If he had pulled the trigger, you would be dead." Sienna met his gaze. Her eyes were dark, hollow, and unimpressed. He didn't know that. Amateurs never know their equipment. The man studied her face, searching for the crack in the armor. "You knew he wouldn't shoot." "I knew he was afraid," Sienna corrected. "Fear makes people hesitate. Hesitation gets you killed or gets you caught." "And you." The man stepped closer. The air crackled between them. "You aren't afraid." Sienna laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "Mister, I make $12 an hour plus tips. I don't have enough energy left to be afraid." She tore the check off her pad and slapped it on the counter. "That'll be $18.50, unless you want dessert." The man stared at her for a long, uncomfortable moment. Then he reached into his jacket. He pulled out a money clip that was thick with $100 bills. He peeled off 5 bills, $500, and placed them on the counter. "Keep the change," he said. He turned and walked to the door. Before he left, he paused, his hand on the brass handle. "What's your name?" "Sienna." "Sienna." He tasted the word. "I'm Gabriel." "Good for you, Gabriel. Don't come back." He smirked, a dangerous, predatory expression that made him look like a wolf in sheep's clothing. "I think I will." He disappeared into the rain. Sienna watched him go. As soon as the tail lights of his car faded, her legs gave out. She slid down the back of the counter, sitting on the dirty floor. She put her head between her knees and took a shaking breath, clutching her hands together to stop the tremors. She wasn't brave. She was just tired of surviving. But this chance encounter would change everything. Because Gabriel Santoro wasn't just any customer, and Sienna Brooks wasn't just any waitress. Gabriel Santoro did not drink diner coffee. He did not visit South Boston slums, and he certainly didn't let people talk to him the way the waitress had. Gabriel was the head of the Santoro Crime Family, an organization that controlled shipping, unions, and high-stakes gambling from Boston to Providence. He was 32 years old and had inherited the throne after his father was gunned down in a barber shop 4 years ago. He had turned the chaotic, bloodthirsty family into a corporate machine. He was calculated, he was lethal, and he was currently obsessed. He sat in the back of his armored Maybach, watching the city roll by through rain-slicked windows. Next to him sat Rocco, his enforcer and oldest friend. Rocco was a slab of muscle with a broken nose and a loyalty that bordered on religious. "Boss," Rocco said, looking at his tablet. "I ran the plates on the car parked out back of the diner. A beaten-up Honda Civic registered to a Sienna Brooks, address in Dorchester." "What else?" Gabriel asked, spinning a silver coin through his fingers. "That's the weird part," Rocco frowned. "There's nothing else. No social media, no credit history prior to 3 years ago. No college records. It's like she popped into existence in 2023. Gabriel stopped spinning the coin. A ghost or someone in witness protection, Rocco suggested, his hand instinctively drifting toward his waistband. No. Gabriel shook his head. Witset creates a better backstory. They give you a history. Sienna Brooks has a void. She's hiding Rocco. But not from the law. Gabriel closed his eyes, replaying the scene in the diner, the way she had analyzed the gun. A 6-hour P229 copy. A waitress doesn't know gun models. A waitress doesn't know double action triggers. Dig deeper, Gabriel commanded. I want to know where she came from. I want to know who her father was. I want to know why a woman with ice in her veins is serving burnt toast for minimum wage. 3 days later, Sienna lost her job. It wasn't because of the robbery. It was because the video of the robbery went viral. Someone outside had filmed the gunman running out, and the audio picked up Sienna's cool dismissal. The internet dubbed her the Ice Queen Waitress. Mr. Miller, the owner, was sweating when he called her into his office. Sienna, look, he stammered, wiping his bald head with a handkerchief. You're great. Really. But the attention. We got news crews out front. The insurance company is asking questions about liability. They say you provoked them. I saved your register, Sienna said, standing by the door, still wearing her coat. I know, but it's too much heat. Here's 2 weeks' pay. He shoved an envelope at her. Please just go. Sienna didn't argue. She didn't plead. She took the envelope, walked out the back door, and threw her apron in the dumpster. It was raining again. It always seemed to be raining in her life. She walked the 6 blocks to the subway station, her head down, ignoring the news van parked across the street. She needed a new job fast. Her rent was due in 4 days. If she missed a payment, the landlord, a sleazy guy named Frank who tried to touch her shoulder every time he collected cash, would evict her. She reached her apartment building, a crumbling brick pile with a broken intercom. She climbed the 4 flights of stairs to 4B. As she unlocked her door, she froze. The lock was already disengaged. Sienna didn't scream. She didn't run. She reached into her purse, her fingers wrapping around the small can of pepper spray, her only weapon since she sold her father's service revolver. She kicked the door open and stayed low. I wouldn't do that. A voice called out from her living room. Sienna stepped inside. Sitting on her thrift store velvet armchair was Gabriel Santoro. The room was tiny, just a bed, a kitchenette, and the chair. But Gabriel made it feel even smaller. He was wearing a navy suit today. No tie. He looked out of place like a diamond in a gutter. Rocco was standing by the window, blocking the fire escape. Breaking and entering, Sienna said, dropping her keys on the counter. She didn't put the pepper spray away. You Mafia types really don't believe in doorbells. Gabriel smiled. It was a genuine smile this time. Amused. Your lock was a joke, Sienna. A hairpin could open it. I'm doing you a favor by showing you how unsafe you are. I was safer before you showed up. She shot back. What do you want? I don't have the $500 you tipped me. I used it to pay the electric bill. I don't want the money. Gabriel stood up. He moved with a feline grace. I heard you got fired. Sienna stiffened. News travels fast. I own the building Miller rents. Gabriel shrugged. I made a call. I told him to fire you. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. Sienna's eyes narrowed. The fatigue vanished, replaced by a sharp, dangerous anger. You got me fired? She whispered. Why? Because I didn't swoon over you in the diner. No, Gabriel said calmly. Because you're wasted there. You have talent, Sienna. You have composure. You have a darkness in you that Miller's diner can't accommodate. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card. It was black with gold embossing. The Onyx Lounge. I need a floor manager for my club, Gabriel said. It's in the Seaport District. High-end clientele, politicians, celebrities, and my associates. I need someone who can handle unruly customers without causing a scene. Someone who doesn't flinch when things get complicated. Sienna looked at the card, then at him. You want me to work for the mob? I want you to work for me, Gabriel corrected. The pay is $3,000 a week cash, plus benefits and full security. No one touches you. No one threatens you. $3,000 a week. That was more than she made in 3 months at the diner. It was enough to disappear properly if she ever needed to. And if I say no? Sienna asked. Gabriel walked toward her. He stopped inches away, invading her personal space. She could smell the sandalwood and tobacco on him. He looked down at her, his dark eyes intense. You won't say no, he said softly. Because you have debt, Sienna. Not just rent. I know about the hospital bills for your mother in New Jersey. The care facility calls you 3 times a week demanding payment. Sienna's breath hitched. That was her secret, her leverage. Her mother, suffering from early onset dementia, hidden away in a private facility that cost a fortune. It was the only reason Sienna was still alive. She had to pay the bills. You investigated me, she said, her voice shaking with rage. I protect my investments, Gabriel said. Work for me, and the facility is paid for in full for as long as she lives. It was a deal with the devil. She knew it. He knew it. Sienna looked at Rocco, who was watching her with a blank expression. Then she looked back at Gabriel. This man was dangerous. He was manipulative. He was a criminal. But he was offering her a lifeline. Sienna pocketed the pepper spray. She took the black card from his hand. What are the hours? She asked. Gabriel's grin returned, triumphant and predatory. Dusk till dawn, sweetheart. Welcome to the family. The Onyx Lounge was not a club. It was a cathedral built to the worship of vice. Located on the edge of the Seaport District, it occupied the ground floor and basement of a renovated industrial warehouse. The walls were exposed brick painted a matte black. The booths were upholstered in crushed velvet, the color of dried blood, and the lighting was kept low enough to hide sins, but bright enough to count money. Sienna adjusted the cuffs of her blazer. Gabriel hadn't lied about the wardrobe budget. He had provided her with a stipend, but she had chosen her own armor. Tailored black trousers, a silk blouse, and a fitted blazer. She looked like a CEO, not a cocktail waitress. She needed the distinction. In a place like this, if you looked like the help, you were treated like the furniture. It was her 4th night as the floor manager. The learning curve had been steep. Sienna had to memorize the faces of the Boston elite. City councilors who needed their drinks strong and their receipts vague. Union leaders who needed private booths. And the captains of the Santoro Crime Family, who needed to be treated with absolute deference. She stood near the host stand, scanning the room. Her eyes moved constantly, a habit ingrained in her since childhood. Exits. Aggressors. Line of sight. You stand like a soldier. A voice rumbled near her ear. Sienna didn't jump. She turned slowly to find Gabriel standing beside her. He was wearing a tuxedo tonight, unbuttoned at the collar. He looked tired, but the intensity in his eyes hadn't dimmed. I stand like someone who doesn't want to get knocked over, Sienna replied, turning her attention back to the floor. Table 6 needs a refill on the Macallan, and the senator in booth 2 is getting handsy with the server. I'm about to cut him off. Gabriel chuckled low in his throat. Senator Mitchell. Good luck. He's been drinking here since my father ran the place. He thinks he owns the city. He can own the city, Sienna said coolly. But he doesn't own the staff. Watch me. She walked away from Gabriel, moving through the crowd with a fluid grace. Gabriel watched her go, leaning against a pillar. He was fascinated by her. Most people he hired were either terrified of him or trying to be him. Sienna was neither. She treated him like an annoying landlord. It was refreshing. He watched as she approached the senator's booth. The politician was red-faced, his hand gripping the wrist of a young waitress named Chloe. Chloe looked terrified. Sienna didn't make a scene. She didn't shout. She simply placed a glass of water on the table with a sharp clack. The sound cut through the senator's drunken haze. Senator, Sienna said, her voice dropping an octave, your car is out front. I'm not done, the senator slurred, not letting go of Chloe. Who are you? Sienna leaned in. She placed her hand on the table, leaning her weight forward. I'm the woman who decides if those photos of you snorting cocaine in the bathroom 10 minutes ago make it to the Globe tomorrow morning. The senator froze. His grip on Chloe's wrist loosened. There were no photos. Sienna hadn't even seen him go to the bathroom. But men like Senator Mitchell always had something to hide, and they always assumed everyone was watching. It was a bluff, calculated and cold. "Get out," Sienna whispered, smiling pleasantly for the room. The senator scrambled up, throwing a handful of cash on the table and practically ran towards the exit. Sienna nodded to Chloe. "Take 10 in the break room. I'll cover your section." When she returned to her post, Gabriel was waiting with a glass of champagne. "You bluff well," he noted, impressed. "Who said I was bluffing?" Sienna took the glass but didn't drink. "You have cameras in the bathrooms, Gabriel. I just assumed you were recording." Gabriel's expression tightened slightly. "You're observant. Dangerous quality. Necessary quality," she corrected. The peaceful atmosphere shattered at 11 p.m. The front door swung open and a group of 4 men walked in. The air in the club changed instantly. The music didn't stop and the conversations continued, but the temperature dropped. The Santoro soldiers stationed around the room stiffened, hands drifting to jackets. Leading the new group was a man Sienna recognized from the dossier Gabriel had made her study. Marco Vane, the underboss of the Moretti family, the Santoro's only real rivals in Boston. Marco was young, reckless, and loud. He wore a white suit that screamed for attention, and he had a reputation for violence that lacked Gabriel's strategic restraint. "Gabriel," Marco shouted, spreading his arms wide. "I heard you got a new dog to guard the door. Where is he?" Gabriel stepped forward from the shadows, his face an unreadable mask. "Marco, you're far from the North End. Did you get lost?" "Just checking out the competition." Marco sneered. He walked past the host stand, ignoring Sienna entirely. He grabbed a bottle of vodka from a passing tray, took a swig and smashed the bottle on the floor. Glass shattered. The music stopped. "Oops." Marco grinned. "Slippery hands." Rocco stepped forward, his knuckles white. Gabriel held up a hand to stop him. A fight here now would bring the police. The Onyx Lounge was a legitimate front. Blood on the floor was bad for business. "Clean it up," Marco commanded, snapping his fingers at Sienna. "Hey sweetie, get a broom." Sienna looked at the shattered glass, then at Marco. The entire club was watching. If she cleaned it, the Santoros looked weak. If she refused, violence would erupt. Sienna walked over to the mess. She crouched down. Marco laughed, looking at Gabriel. "See? They all bow eventually." Sienna picked up a large, jagged shard of the glass. She stood up slowly. She wasn't holding it like a piece of trash. She was holding it like a shank. She closed the distance between them in 2 steps. Before Marco could react, she was inside his personal space. She took his hand, the one that had snapped at her, and placed the jagged glass into his palm. She closed his fingers over it, squeezing tight. Not enough to cut deep, but enough to prick the skin. Enough to promise pain. "You dropped this," Sienna whispered, her face inches from his. Her eyes were dead voids. "And in this house we don't clean up after children. We call their mothers to pick them up." Marco flinched. He tried to pull his hand away, but Sienna's grip was surprisingly ironclad. She leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. "And Marco, your pupil dilation suggests you're on uppers. Your heart rate is visible in your neck. If you start a fight here, you will gas out in 30 seconds. My bouncers will peel you off the floor like gum. Walk away." Marco ripped his hand back. A single drop of blood welled on his palm. He looked at Sienna, genuine shock in his eyes. He looked at Gabriel, who was watching with a terrifyingly calm smirk. "You're crazy," Marco muttered. He signaled his men. "Let's go. This place smells like stale smoke anyway." They retreated. The door closed. The silence lingered for 3 seconds before the jazz band started playing again. Gabriel walked over to Sienna. She was wiping a speck of vodka off her blazer. "You provoked him," Gabriel said. His tone wasn't angry. It was intense. "I managed him," Sienna corrected. "He wanted a reaction. I gave him a reality check." "He's a killer, Sienna." "So are you," she shot back, finally meeting his gaze. "And I'm still standing here." Gabriel stepped closer, closing the gap. He reached out, his thumb brushing against her cheekbone. It was an intimate gesture, shocking in its tenderness. "Who are you?" he whispered. "Really?" Sienna pulled back, breaking the contact. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, not from fear of Marco, but from the electricity of Gabriel's touch. That was the real danger. "I'm just the staff, Mr. Santoro," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "And I have a mess to clean up." She turned and walked toward the bar, leaving Gabriel staring after her, looking like a man who had just found a diamond in a coal mine and was terrified he might crush it. 2 weeks passed. The incident with Marco Vane had earned Sienna a strange sort of respect among the staff. The bouncers nodded to her. The bartenders made her espresso without asking. She was becoming part of the ecosystem. But Sienna didn't let herself get comfortable. Comfort was how you died. She spent her nights managing the floor and her days visiting her mother at Greenwood Memory Care. The facility was beautiful. Gardens, soft music, nurses who actually smiled. Gabriel had kept his word. The bills were paid. Her mother, a former school teacher named Martha, didn't recognize Sienna most days, but she was safe. That was all that mattered. On a rainy Thursday, Sienna was in the back office of the Onyx reconciling the liquor inventory. The door was ajar. She heard voices in the hallway. "I'm telling you I need more." A jittery voice whined. "The cops are sniffing around my apartment." "You got paid," a deeper voice replied. Sienna recognized it. It was distinctively gravelly. It belonged to Leo, one of Gabriel's lower-level captains, a man who managed the docks. "I got paid for a job I didn't finish," the jittery voice argued. "And that waitress, she messed it up. You said it would be easy. Just scare the old man. Grab the cash. Wait for the signal." Sienna froze. Her pen hovered over the ledger. "Waitress. Scare the old man." She stood up silently, creeping toward the door crack. She saw them. Leo was leaning against the wall, smoking, and facing him was the guy with the bulging eyes from Miller's Diner. The junkie robber, the one she had told to leave. "You were supposed to wait for Santoro to stand up," Leo hissed. "The plan was to clip him in the crossfire of a robbery gone wrong. You idiots ran because a girl scared you with a cigarette. She was spooky, man. She knew about the gun." "Shut up," Leo growled. "Here's another grand. Get out of town. If I see you again, I'll bury you under the I-93 overpass." The junkie grabbed the cash and bolted toward the back exit. Leo adjusted his jacket and walked back toward the main club floor. Sienna leaned back against the desk, her breath coming in shallow gasps. The robbery hadn't been random. It was a hit. A hit on Gabriel, and it was orchestrated by his own man, Leo. If Leo wanted Gabriel dead, that meant there was a traitor in the inner circle. And if Sienna told Gabriel, who would he believe? The waitress he'd known for a month or the captain he'd known for 10 years? She needed proof, or she needed to save him when the next attempt happened, because there would be a next time. "Get your coat." Sienna looked up. Gabriel was standing in the doorway of the office. He looked sharp in a midnight blue suit, but his eyes were weary. "Where are we going?" Sienna asked, closing the ledger. "Private game," Gabriel said. "High-stakes poker in a warehouse in Chelsea. I need you to serve drinks and observe. You have better eyes than my bodyguards." Sienna's stomach dropped. Chelsea. That was Leo's territory. "Is Leo going to be there?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "Leo is hosting it." Gabriel nodded. "Why?" "No reason." Sienna lied. She grabbed her coat. She couldn't tell him yet. Not without proof. Leo would deny it, frame her, and she'd end up dead. She had to go. She had to be the shield. She checked her purse. The pepper spray was gone. In its place, she had slipped a folding tactical knife she bought at a surplus store. It wasn't much, but it was something. The drive to Chelsea was tense. The rain lashed against the armored windows of the SUV. Rocco was driving. Gabriel sat next to Sienna, reading emails on his phone. "You're quiet tonight," Gabriel said, glancing at her. "Just thinking," Sienna said. "About loyalty," she said. "It's a rare currency." Gabriel put his phone down. "It's the only currency. Everything else is just paper." They arrived at the warehouse. It was a cavernous space, dimly lit with a single poker table set up in the center under a heavy industrial light. The rest of the room was in shadow. Leo was there, smiling, holding a bottle of bourbon. There were 4 other men at the table, rival bosses and high rollers. "Boss," Leo grinned, spreading his arms. Glad you made it. Rocco, you stay by the door. Don't want to spook the guests. Rocco grunted and took his position at the entrance 30 feet away. Gabriel sat at the head of the table. Sienna took her place slightly behind him, holding a silver tray with crystal glasses. The game started. The mood was jovial, but Sienna felt the tension radiating off the walls. She scanned the shadows. The warehouse was full of shipping crates. Too many blind spots. Leo was acting nervous. He kept checking his watch. He kept looking at the metal rafters above them. Sienna poured bourbon for a man named Sal. As she leaned in, she whispered to Gabriel, pretending to ask about ice. Check the rafters, she breathed, barely moving her lips. 3 o'clock. Gabriel didn't look up. He didn't flinch. He picked up his cards. Fold, he said loudly, tossing his hand. He reached for his glass, and in the reflection of the amber liquid, he saw it. A glint of metal in the dark rafters. A sniper scope. At the same moment, Leo stepped back from the table. I gotta hit the head. Deal me out. Leo, Gabriel said. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. Sit down. Leo froze. What? I said sit down. Drop the tray, Sienna screamed. She didn't wait. She grabbed Gabriel by the collar of his suit and yanked him backward, chair and all. Crack. A bullet slammed into the poker table exactly where Gabriel's chest had been a second before. Wood splinters exploded. Ambush. Rocco roared from the door, drawing his weapon. Chaos erupted. The other players flipped the table for cover. Sienna and Gabriel hit the concrete floor hard. Gabriel was on top of her for a split second, shielding her, before rolling into a crouch behind a stack of crates. Sniper! High ground! Gabriel shouted to Rocco. More shots rang out, pinging off the concrete floor near them. It wasn't just a sniper. Gunmen were emerging from the shadows of the shipping containers. Leo set you up. Sienna yelled over the gunfire. She was pressed against Gabriel's side behind the crate. I heard him talking to the robber from the diner. It was an inside job. Gabriel looked at her, his eyes blazing with a mixture of fury and realization. He pulled a handgun from a holster at the small of his back. A sleek Beretta. Stay down, he commanded. No, Sienna said. She saw a gunman flanking them on the left. Gabriel was focused on the sniper. Sienna didn't think. She acted on instinct, honed by a lifetime of watching her father clean his weapons. A lifetime of being told that hesitation was death. She lunged forward, sliding across the floor to where a fallen bodyguard had dropped his gun. She grabbed the weapon, a Glock 19. The flanking gunman raised his rifle at Gabriel's exposed back. Sienna fired. 2 shots center mass. The gunman dropped. Gabriel spun around, gun raised, shocked to see Sienna holding the smoking weapon. Her form was perfect. Her hands weren't shaking. I told you, Sienna said, her voice devoid of emotion, her eyes scanning for the next target. I know about safeties. Rocco suppressing fire. Gabriel yelled, snapping back to reality. He grabbed Sienna's arm. We moved to the exit on 3. 1, 2, 3. They ran. Bullets chewed up the floor behind them. Rocco was laying down heavy fire with a submachine gun he'd pulled from under his coat, covering their retreat. They burst out the side door into the pouring rain. The SUV was waiting. They dove inside. Go, go, go. Gabriel screamed. The tires screeched and the armored car tore away from the warehouse, leaving the ambush behind. Inside the car, the silence was deafening. Sienna sat trembling, the adrenaline crash finally hitting her. She dropped the gun on the floor mat. She looked at her hands. They were covered in grease and dust. Gabriel stared at her. He looked at the gun. He looked at her face. You killed him, Gabriel said softly. He was going to shoot you in the back, Sienna whispered. She felt like she was going to throw up. You saved me, he repeated, emphasizing the word. Gabriel reached out, taking her shaking hands in his. His grip was bruising, possessive, desperate. You saved my life, he said. Twice. Leo, I know. Gabriel's voice turned to ice. Leo is a dead man walking. But you, he pulled her closer. The barrier between boss and employee, between mobster and civilian, had been shattered by the gunshot. You aren't just a waitress, Sienna, Gabriel murmured, his eyes searching hers. Who taught you to shoot like that? Sienna looked away, staring out at the blurred city lights. Tears pricked her eyes. My father, she confessed, her voice barely audible. Detective Frank Brooks, narcotics. Before he went to prison, before he died. Gabriel stiffened. He knew the name. Frank Brooks was a legend. A corrupt cop who had played both sides of the law and paid the ultimate price. Your father was a rat, Gabriel said, the realization dawning on him. My father was a survivor, Sienna snapped, pulling her hands away. Until he wasn't. And he taught me that the only person coming to save you is you. Gabriel looked at her with a new expression. It wasn't just attraction anymore. It was recognition. He saw the same broken shards in her soul that existed in his own. You're wrong, Gabriel said. He reached out again, this time cupping her jaw, forcing her to look at him. You're with me now, Sienna. You're family. And no one touches my family. He leaned in, his lips inches from hers. The adrenaline, the fear, the violence, it all coalesced into a magnetic pull that neither of them could resist. But before their lips could touch, Rocco shouted from the front seat. Boss, we got a tail. 2 cars. They're ramming us. The SUV shuddered violently as a heavy sedan smashed into their rear bumper. Sienna was thrown against Gabriel's chest. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. The armored SUV was a ruin of twisted metal and shattered glass. It sat smoking in a ditch off an exit ramp on I-93, the rain sizzling against the hot engine block. Minutes earlier, the pursuing sedan had clipped their rear axle, sending them spinning out of control. Rocco, bleeding from a cut on his forehead but fiercely alive, had shoved a fresh magazine into his submachine gun. Boss, take the exit, Rocco had roared, kicking his door open. There's a stash car at the storage yard on 4th. Go. I'll hold them here. Rocco, Gabriel had started, but the enforcer was already firing into the darkness, drawing the attention of the hit squad. Now, 20 minutes later, the silence was absolute. Gabriel drove a nondescript rust bucket Ford Taurus, the emergency car, north towards the New Hampshire border. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Beside him, Sienna stared out the window at the passing blackness of the forest. Her hands were still trembling, but she wasn't crying. She was dissociating, a defense mechanism she knew well from the nights her father didn't come home. You're bleeding, Sienna said, her voice cutting through the hum of the heater. Gabriel glanced down. A dark stain was spreading on the left shoulder of his dress shirt, a graze from a bullet during the warehouse escape. It's nothing, he grunted. It's not nothing. Pull over. We can't stop. Leo knows the city spots. We have to get to the lake house. They drove for another 2 hours in silence until the city lights were a distant memory, replaced by the crushing dark of the wilderness. The lake house wasn't a cottage. It was a fortress of glass and timber hidden at the end of a 3-mile dirt road. Gabriel killed the engine. The silence of the woods was louder than the gunfire had been. Inside, he commanded, his voice tight with pain. The interior was freezing. Gabriel keyed a code into a panel, and the lights flickered on, revealing a modern, minimalist living room with a fireplace. He went straight for a liquor cabinet, pouring a glass of whiskey, then collapsed onto the leather sofa. Sienna didn't sit. She went to the kitchen, found the first aid kit under the sink, standard placement, and returned. She grabbed the whiskey from his hand, took a sip herself to steady her nerves, and set it down. Shirt off, she ordered. Gabriel looked at her. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead. The adrenaline was wearing off, and the pain was setting in. He unbuttoned the ruined shirt, revealing a torso that was a map of violence. Old scars, knife wounds, burns. The fresh wound on his shoulder was angry and red, but shallow. It needs cleaning, Sienna said, soaking a gauze pad in antiseptic. This is going to burn. Do it. She pressed the pad against the wound. Gabriel hissed, his hand gripping the armrest so hard the leather creaked. Sienna worked with efficient, clinical precision. She cleaned the blood, applied a butterfly bandage, and wrapped it. When she finished, she didn't pull away. She stood between his knees, her hands resting on his bare chest, feeling the heavy thud of his heart. You should have left me at the diner, Sienna whispered. Gabriel looked up at her. His eyes were dark pools of exhaustion and intensity. If I had left you at the diner, you'd be dead. Leo would have cleaned up loose ends. I was dead anyway, Sienna said, her voice cracking. I've been dead for 3 years since my dad went to prison, since my mom forgot my name. I was just waiting. And now? Gabriel asked. He reached up, his hand cupping the back of her neck, pulling her face down toward his. Now I'm terrified, she admitted. But I'm awake. Gabriel's thumb stroked her cheek. You're not just awake, Sienna. You're fire. I saw you tonight. You didn't hesitate. You didn't freeze. You saved me. I shot a man, Gabriel. You saved me, he repeated, emphasizing the word. In my world, that's the only morality that exists. Us versus them. The distance between them evaporated. Gabriel pulled her down. This time there was no interruption. His lips met hers with a hunger that was born of near death. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate, claiming, a mix of violence and devotion. Sienna kissed him back, her fingers tangling in his dark hair. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like the invisible waitress. She felt powerful. She felt seen. Outside, the wind howled through the pines. Inside, the fire was just starting to catch, casting long dancing shadows against the walls. They stayed on the sofa, wrapped in each other, two broken people finding jagged pieces that fit together. Sienna, Gabriel murmured against her skin later as the fire crackled. If we get through this, you know you can't go back. There's no more Miller's Diner. No more shadows. I know, she said, resting her head on his uninjured shoulder. I don't want to go back. Good, Gabriel said, his voice hardening into the tone of the dawn. Because tomorrow we go back to Boston, and we burn Leo's world to the ground. The morning sun hit the lake with a blinding glare. By the time Sienna woke, Gabriel was already dressed in black, checking the magazine of his Beretta. I called a meeting, Gabriel said, his voice lethal despite his injuries. Tonight, the Onyx Lounge. I invited the heads of the 5 families and Leo. Leo won't come, Sienna argued. He knows he missed. He'll come, Gabriel replied with a grim smile. Because I told him I'm surrendering. I told him I'm weak and ready to hand over my territory. The Onyx Lounge was transformed. The tables were pushed back, leaving a large open circle where the heads of the New England crime families sat. Sienna stood by the bar wearing a sleek black dress with a tactical knife strapped to her thigh beneath the silk. She scanned the room. Leo was there, pacing, looking smug. In the center chair sat Salvatore, Uncle Sal Moretti, the oldest and most respected Don, wearing a white carnation in his lapel. Cut the crap, Gabriel, Leo interrupted the proceedings. Just sign the papers. I am the family now. No, Uncle Sal spoke up, his voice raspy. He stood slowly. You are a disappointment, Leo. The room went silent. I'm saying, Sal continued, that a dog who bites his master needs to be put down. As Sal adjusted his jacket, Sienna saw it. A bright red handkerchief in his pocket. She remembered her father's old case files. White for peace, red for war. Sal wasn't here to mediate. He was the architect. He had used Leo to weaken Gabriel, and now he was going to wipe them both out to take the city. The 2 bartenders suddenly pulled shotguns from beneath the counter. Gabriel, down! Sienna screamed. She didn't run. She grabbed a bottle of high-proof rum and hurled it at the nearest light fixture. The bulb shattered, sparks ignited the alcohol, and a fireball blew out the main circuit breaker. The club plunged into darkness, lit only by the strobing red emergency lights. Down! Gabriel roared. Chaos erupted. Gunfire flashed like lightning. In the confusion, Leo's men turned on Sal's, but Sal's hit squad was superior. Sienna crawled through the glass. In the strobe light, she saw Sal standing over a fallen bodyguard, aiming his pistol directly at her. Smart girl, Sal sneered, looking demonic in the red light. Too smart. No, Gabriel screamed. He didn't fire. He threw himself in the path of the bullet. A shot rang out. Gabriel jerked back, hitting the floor hard. Gabriel! Sienna's scream tore her throat. She looked at Sal. He was adjusting his aim for the kill shot. A shotgun lay on the floor 5 feet away, dropped by a wounded bartender. Sienna dove. She rolled, grabbed the cold steel and pumped the action. Chunk chunk. She was on her back, sliding on the slick floor. She raised the barrel. Sal hesitated. He looked at the waitress and saw the same look she had given the robber in the diner. Absolute icy calm. Checkmate, Sienna whispered. Boom. The blast caught Sal in the chest, lifting him off his feet and throwing him back into his velvet chair. Silence returned to the room, broken only by the wailing alarm. Sienna scrambled to Gabriel. He was clutching his side, blood seeping through his fingers. Gabriel. She pressed her hands over his wound. Stay with me. He coughed, a wet, rattling sound, but a pained smile touched his lips. You really hate bad tippers, he wheezed. Sienna laughed through her tears. Hold on. I pulled the alarm. Help is coming. Gabriel squeezed her hand, his grip weak but possessive. I'm not going anywhere, Sienna. We have work to do. 6 months later, the bell above the door of Miller's all-night diner jingled. It was 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. The rain was hammering against the plate glass, just like it had on that fateful night. Mr. Miller looked up from the register, expecting a drunk or a lost tourist. Instead, he froze. A woman walked in. She was wearing a cream-colored trench coat tailored to perfection, diamond studs in her ears, and heels that clicked with authority on the linoleum floor. It was Sienna, but it wasn't the waitress he had fired. This Sienna carried herself with a terrifying elegance. Her hair was cut into a sharp, fashionable bob, and her eyes, once tired and dull, were now sharp and observant. Behind her walked Gabriel Santoro. He moved with a slight limp, a souvenir from the bullet he took for her, but he looked as dangerous as ever. Rocco stood by the entrance, arms crossed, blocking the door. See, Sienna, Mr. Miller stammered, wiping sweat from his forehead. I heard things, crazy things. No. Sienna walked to the counter. She didn't look at the floor. She looked him in the eye. Hello, Mr. Miller. The place looks exactly the same. We're closing soon, Miller said, his voice shaking. And about your firing, the insurance company made me do it. Actually, Gabriel said, stepping up beside Sienna, his voice a low rumble. You're under new management. He placed a folded document on the counter. I bought the building, Miller, and the block and the loan on your house. Miller turned pale. Please, Mr. Santoro. He knows, Sienna said softly, placing a gloved hand on the counter. I'm not here for revenge, Miller. I'm here for pie. Miller blinked. Pie. Cherry and 2 coffees. Black. They sat in booth 4, the same booth Gabriel had occupied the night they met. The diner was empty save for them. You miss it? Gabriel asked, watching her take a sip of the bitter coffee. The coffee? God, no. Sienna laughed. But this place? It's where I stopped hiding. Gabriel reached across the table and took her hand. His thumb traced the platinum ring on her finger. The city is quiet. With Sal gone and the families in line, we have peace. You've done good work, Sienna. It was true. In the last 6 months, Sienna had become the brain to Gabriel's muscle. She was known on the street not as the waitress, but as La Señora, the lady. She balanced the books, vetted the recruits, and smoothed over wars with diplomacy before they began. The door opened again. A young man walked in, nervous. Hoodie pulled up, hands jammed in his pockets. He marched straight to the counter. Give me the cash, the boy yelled, pulling a jagged, rusty kitchen knife on Miller. Sienna stopped drinking her coffee. She watched the shake in the boy's hands. He's going to panic, Sienna said calmly to Gabriel. Want me to handle it? Gabriel asked, reaching for his jacket. No, Sienna said. Drink your coffee. She stood up. Her heels clicked rhythmically as she approached the counter. Put it away, she commanded. The boy spun around. He sneered when he saw her. Sit down, lady, or I'll cut you. Sienna didn't flinch. She took a step closer, invading his space. That's a serrated bread knife, she said, sounding bored. Terrible for stabbing. It'll get caught on the fabric of a coat, and your stance is wide. You're off balance. The boy looked confused. What? I'm saying, Sienna said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, that you are making a mistake that will cost you the rest of your life. She nodded towards the back booth. The boy looked. He saw Gabriel Santoro, the face that was on the news, the face that nightmares were made of. Gabriel was just watching, sipping his coffee, looking at the boy like he was a dead insect. The boy's face went white. He dropped the knife. It clattered on the floor. "I didn't know," he stammered. "Go." Sienna pointed to the door. "Get a job. If I see you in this neighborhood again, I won't be this polite." The boy ran, disappearing into the rainy night faster than anyone Sienna had ever seen. Sienna picked up the knife with a napkin and set it on the counter. "Put that in the lost and found, Miller." She walked back to the booth and sat down. Gabriel was smiling, a true smile full of love and pride. "You didn't even use a cigarette this time," he noted. "I quit." Sienna leaned across the table and kissed him. It was a soft, lingering kiss that tasted of victory. "But at least now I'm the one holding the gun." She looked out the window at the rain-slick streets of Boston. The waitress who had served coffee in the shadows was gone. The queen had taken her throne. Sienna Brooks went from serving tables to ruling the underworld, proving that sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the gun. It's the one who isn't afraid to use it. Gabriel Santoro found a partner who didn't just stand behind him, but stood beside him when the world burned. What did you think of the ending? Did Sienna make the right choice? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this Mafia romance saga from Taleverse Studio, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe to Taleverse Studio and hit the bell icon for more stories like this. Thanks for watching.